Hi everyone, welcome back once again to these video lessons on biology. So in today's video, we're going to discuss subtopic 11.4 in your Form 5 KSSM biology syllabus. The title is Inheritance of Blood Groups. So this is an interesting topic. Do you know what your blood group is? Have you tested your blood group before? Right? So each person has a specific blood group. And the blood group that he has depends on what alleles or genes his parents have given him. So your father will give you one allele for a blood group, one gene for a blood group. And your mother will give you another allele or gene for a blood group. Okay? So we're going to find out how we inherit the alleles from father and mother to get our blood group, right? And also we're going to find out how to draw the schematic diagrams related to inheritance of blood groups. So this is a very interesting topic. So let's get started. The learning standards for today's lesson are as follows. 11.4 Inheritance in Humans. We should be able to relate Mendel's laws to human inheritance. After this lesson, examples of human inheritance are the inheritance of the ABO blood groups, which we will discuss in this video. Now, for the rest of the characteristics like rhesus factor, thalassemia, ability to roll the tongue, types of earlobe, sex determination, and sex-linked inheritance, like color blindness and hemophilia. All these will be discussed, later on in other videos. So it depends on the time, that we need. So we'll try to discuss some of these as we go along. Apart from ABO blood groups in this video, we try to discuss rhesus factor and thalassemia. Now, other than that, we are going to analyze human inheritance by constructing inheritance cross diagrams. Now, this is according to the syllabus, okay? So actually, inheritance cross diagrams are the genetic or schematic diagrams that we have drawn earlier on for monohybrid inheritance, okay? Something that is similar to the diagrams for monohybrid inheritance. Next, we should be able to construct a cross diagram to determine genotypic and phenotypic ratios. So we'll be discussing some questions related to blood groups and to the inheritance of blood groups, and then we will find out how to determine the genotypic and phenotypic ratios after drawing the genetic or schematic diagrams. Now, how do we use these videos to help us excel and score high marks in biology? Firstly, the first step is to watch the video in order to understand what the topic is about, to understand the biological principles and concepts that are taught. After that, we can jot down the notes in order to remember the concepts and the explanations, right? Then memorize the notes and the biological concepts and explanations. So we are going to start by understanding the topic first of all, right? So let's talk about inheritance of different characteristics in humans. So here we are going to study the inheritance of the ABO blood groups in humans. Now, this is part of revision because it has been discussed in Form 4, Chapter 10, all right, for this part. So in the ABO blood group classification, human blood is classified into 4 blood groups, which are A, B, AB, and O blood groups, right? So how do we classify a the blood into the 4 different types. Okay, how do you classify human blood into 4 different types? So the classification of the blood groups is based on the presence or absence of 2 antigens, A and B, located on the plasma membrane of red blood cells. Okay, so these antigens, A and B, they're actually glycoproteins, meaning protein combined with carbohydrates that are present on the surface of red blood cells, right? So there are some people who have only antigen A on the surface membrane of red blood cells. So their blood is grouped in this category, blood group A, right? And there are some people who have another antigen that's different from antigen A, and this is antigen B on their red blood cells. So they are classified, their blood is classified as blood group B. Then there are some people who have both antigen A and B in the red blood cells. So they are classified as having AB blood group. Okay, because of the presence of antigen A, the yellow one here, and B, the blue one. Then lastly, there's another category in which the red blood cells do not have antigen A or antigen B. Looks quite empty, right, in this case. So they are classified as having blood group O. The O is like a kosong, 0. No antigen A or B. All right. So we notice here that the blood group is named after the antigen that's present in the red blood cell of the person. So if you are blood group A, you have antigen A. Okay. And if you are blood group B, it means you have this antigen B in your red blood cells. Okay. So if you are in blood group AB, you have both the antigens A and B. All right. So the blood group is named after the type of antigen that's present in the red blood cells of the person. And if you are blood group O, you have neither antigen nor antigen A nor antigen B. You have neither of these antigens on your red blood cells. Right? So this is part of revision, and here we can conclude type of antigens A and B on the red blood cells, whether you have antigen A or antigen B, or both antigens or no antigens. All this will then determine the blood group of your blood group, all right, depending on what type of antigen you have in the red blood cells. So let's present our discussion just now in the form of a table, right? So your blood group is named after the antigen you have on your red blood cell. Now, phenotype here means the observable characteristic, or in this case, the characteristic that can be tested, such as blood group, right? So if you have the blood group A, it means that you have antigen A, only antigen A in your red blood cells. Right? Red blood cells, RBC stands for red blood cells. If you have a blood group B, you have antigen B on the surface of your red blood cells. If you belong to blood group AB, it means that you have both antigen A and antigen B in your red blood cells. And if you belong to blood group O, you have none of the antigens A or B, no antigens A or B on the red blood cells. The O is like a 0 or kosong, empty in that case. But there is no specific advantage or disadvantage, okay, if you belong to any of these blood groups. Okay, it doesn't mean that one blood group is better than the other. Okay, now the fun fact is that the most common blood type is actually O positive. The positive here stands for rhesus factor, the presence of rhesus factor, which we'll discuss later on. But the most common type of blood is blood group O. Okay, so this holds true even when I do a survey of the types of blood group among students in class, right? O is the most common blood group, followed by blood group A and B, which have equal numbers of students having this blood group. And lastly, the rarest one is blood group AB. Now, inheritance of blood groups. ABO blood group in humans is controlled by a gene, which consists of 3 alleles, namely alleles IA, IB, and IO. Okay? So, do you know your blood group? Actually, your blood group depends on the genes or the basic unit of inheritance that you have received from your parents, your mother and your father. Okay? They will each give you a gene or an allele for blood group. So when we can say that the gene for blood group consists of 3 alleles. That means 3 specific forms or 3 alternative forms of the gene for blood group. They are still genes, okay? So we have alleles that are called alleles IA, and then IB and IO. There are 3 alleles, but each person can have only 2 of these alleles in his or her diploid cell, okay? So here you see a picture of a chromosome, and this is actually chromosome number 9, okay, that carries the gene for blood group on it, right? So here I show a picture of a chromosome number 9 with the gene or allele IA, with the allele IA. Okay. Now, so there are 2 more, IB and IO, right? 2 more alleles. Now, so all these alleles determine what types of antigens, whether it's antigen A or B, are present on the surface membranes of red blood cells. Okay. So the type of antigens on the red blood cells is determined by the allele that you receive, the alleles that you receive from your father and mother. Okay. Now, the types of antigen on red blood cells will then determine your blood group. Okay. So here's a picture that illustrates the inheritance of blood groups more completely. So the gene for blood group in humans consists of 3 different alleles, IA, IB, and IO. Now, these alleles are the different forms or versions of the gene that controls blood group in humans. So the first allele is IA, and it is found on chromosome number 9, just like allele IB and IO, right? So allele IA causes formation of antigen A on red blood cells. So if a person has this allele IA, his red blood cells will have this antigen A on it, all right? Because this gene has the code for the production of an enzyme that finally leads to the formation of this antigen A on the red blood cells, all right? So we just say that allele IA causes the formation of antigen A on red blood cells, okay? And then the second allele is IB. IB causes formation of another antigen called antigen B on red blood cells. Lastly, we have the allele IO that does not cause formation of antigen A or B on red blood cells. Now, going on to the notes. 3 alleles determine the type of antigens on red blood cells, as we have discussed in the previous slide. So allele IA causes formation of antigen A on red blood cells, whereas allele IB causes formation of antigen B on red blood cells. Allele IO does not cause the formation of antigen A or B on red blood cells. Next point to note is that alleles IA and IB are co-dominant or equally dominant. The word co means equally. So they are equally dominant or co-dominant, meaning that they are equally expressed in a heterozygote that has alleles IA and IB. So a heterozygote is a person who has 2 different alleles, for example, IA and IB. Now, let's look at this picture of a cell from a person who has alleles IA and IB. So IA will cause the formation of antigen A on red blood cells, and IB will cause formation of antigen B on the red blood cells. That means this person will have red blood cells with 2 antigens on it, right? A and B, antigens A and B. Thus, he will have the blood group AB, because alleles IA and IB are co-dominant. On the other hand, allele IO is recessive, meaning that it is like the so-called weaker allele. So in the presence of a dominant allele, allele IO cannot express its trait. Alright, so notice that there are two alleles for blood groups, for the blood group in each cell of a person. A person can have only two alleles for blood group on a pair of homologous chromosomes, right? Because one allele comes from the father and one allele comes from the mother. Okay, father will contribute one allele for blood group on chromosome number 9, the paternal chromosome number 9, and mother will contribute another allele for blood group on the maternal chromosome number 9, right? So if a person has this genotype, we call this the genotype, IAIO genotype, or genetic composition. So a person with the genotype IAIO will have the blood group A, because the IA allele is dominant compared to the IO allele, which is recessive. Thus, IA will express its trait. It will cause the formation of antigen A on the red blood cells, like for this example here, the first one, right? And IO cannot express its trait in the presence of IA. So overall, the person will be able to produce the antigen A, and he will be classified as having blood group A, okay? Even though he has one IO allele. So IO allele is recessive, or it's so-called the weaker allele, and it cannot express its trait in the presence of alleles IA or IB. Next, so a person has only two alleles for blood group on a pair of homologous chromosomes, as seen here, two alleles, and one's a paternal chromosome, all right, that carries one allele for blood group, and the other is the maternal chromosome that carries another allele for blood group from mother, right? And this will determine his blood group. These two alleles will determine his blood group. So going on further, these are examples of inheritance of blood groups, all right? Now, if you look at this picture, so this person's cell has two alleles, IA. So what is his blood group? Now, this allele IA will cause production of antigen A, so he'll be in this group, blood group A, right? You have blood group A, or you have blood classified as blood group A. Now, for a person who has these alleles IBIO, the IB here, the IB allele, causes formation of antigen B, right? Whereas IO does not cause formation of any antigen like A or B. So finally, he will have antigen B on his red blood cells, and his blood group is B. Okay. Then for a person who has the genotype IAIB, he will produce because of IA, he will produce the antigen A, right? And IB will cause formation of antigen B. So he will have both antigens A and B, so his blood group is AB. Okay. And for a person who has this genotype IOIO, so this person is called a homozygous individual because he has two similar alleles. Okay, two alleles that are the same, identical alleles. So this person is called a homozygous individual if he has two identical alleles, okay, as we have studied in the other subtopics. And because the allele is the recessive allele, we say that this person is homozygous recessive. Homozygous recessive for blood group O. That's how we describe this person, okay? Or homozygous recessive. So with this allele IO, he will not be able to produce any antigen, A or B, all right? Because this allele IO does not code for production of antigen A or B, all right? So he will belong to blood group O. His blood group is O. It's a very useful table, which summarizes what we have discussed. All right, so you can copy this down if you want to. Now, in this table, we are going to discuss the possible genotypes for the different blood groups, such as A, B, AB, and O. For example, if your blood group is A, what is your possible genotype? So for people with blood group A, or people whose blood group is A, there are two possible genotypes. First of all, a blood group A phenotype must have this IA allele that causes the formation of antigen A in the red blood cells, right? But then each person will have a pair of these alleles in each diploid cell. One allele is from the father and one allele is from the mother. Okay, so and we know that allele IA and IB are dominant alleles, whereas allele IO is the recessive allele. So what are the possible genotypes for a person with blood group A? Now, it's either IA or IAIO. Okay, so as long as he has the allele IA, he's able to produce the antigen A on the red blood cells, right? Now, if you look at this individual, IAIA, with this genotype IAIA, this individual is a homozygous dominant individual, homozygous dominant for blood group A. This is how we call him or use the term homozygous dominant. Homozygous means having identical alleles, IAIA. Now, on the other hand, this individual that has a genotype IAIO is called a heterozygous individual. Heterozygous for blood group A. Heterozygous means having two different alleles, all right, for a particular genotype, for a genotype, or in the genotype. So if he has alleles IA, the allele IA, he's able to produce the antigen A. And because allele IO is a recessive allele, it will not express its trait at all. Okay? And only the dominant allele IA will express its trait. So there will be formation of antigen A in the red blood cells. And he will be, his blood group will be classified as blood group A. Now, pause the video for a while and try to fill up these blanks here for the possible genotypes of a person with blood group B, AB, and O. Okay, just pause the video and think about the possible genotypes. So fill up these columns, the column here. All right, now let's look at the answer. A person who has blood group B possibly has the genotype IBIB or IBIO. Okay, so as long as he has the allele IB, he's able to produce the antigen B on the surface of the red blood cells. All right. So allele IO is a recessive allele. Therefore, it will not express its trait, and only the allele IB expresses its trait. So there's production of antigen B or formation of antigen B on the red blood cells. So this individual IBIB is called a homozygous dominant individual, right? And IBIO is a heterozygous individual. That means heterozygous for blood group B. Now let's try the third one. What is the genotype for a person with blood group AB? Yes, it is IAIB. It's a new blood group. Okay, since IA and IB are co-dominant, that means that they will both express their trait equally, or they express themselves equally, and it will cause the production of antigens A. IA causes production of antigen A on the red blood cell. IB causes production of antigen B on the red blood cell, right? So this blood group is blood group AB, different from blood group A or B. Lastly, a person who has blood group O will have the pair of alleles IO-IO. So in the absence of the dominant allele IA and IB, this allele IO is able to express its trait, and so there is no production of antigen A or B on the red blood cells. Right. So apart from the antigens, let's discuss and revise the type of antibody in the blood plasma for the different blood groups. A person with blood group A has antigen A in his red blood cells, but the antibody in the blood plasma is the anti-B antibody. Alright, so he naturally has anti-B antibody, which can react with antigen B from another person's blood, if that blood is transfused into the person with blood group A, right? Whereas a person with blood group B has antigen B in his red blood cells, but his antibody is anti-A antibody that can react with the antigen A in the blood of a person with blood group A, right? So these two blood groups cannot mix, right? And then for a person with blood group AB, he has the antigens A and B in his red blood cells, but he has no antibodies called anti-A or anti-B in his plasma, blood plasma, because of the presence of these two antigens in his red blood cells already, right? And a person who is in blood group O has no antigens A and B on the red blood cells, but he has the two antibodies called anti-A and anti-B in his blood plasma. Here are some smart notes related to the discussion in the previous slides, the discussion of the table just now. So in the inheritance of blood groups, there are 6 possible genotypes, such as IA, IA, IB, IB, IA, IO, IB, IO, then IA, IB, and IO, IO. But there are only 4 possible phenotypes of blood groups, that is, blood group A, B, AB, and O, right? So go through these notes and you can copy them down if you want. If there are any questions, do ask me in the comment section. Now, the third step to achieving success in the study of biology and to excel in biology is to try as many questions as possible related to each subtopic. Okay? So, by trying questions, we are applying the knowledge that we have learned so that we can prepare ourselves to answer exam questions more easily and in order to get more marks and score in the exam. Now let's go on to the questions, which are important for SPM. Okay, it can be asked in the essay section or even in the structured question. Let's look at the first question. A man with blood group A married a woman with blood group B. With the help of a schematic diagram, determine the probability of the couple getting a child with blood group AB. Now, both parents are heterozygous for their blood groups. 8 marks. Okay, so underline the word schematic diagram, right? And then underline all the different blood groups that I mentioned. And remember that both parents are heterozygous for their blood groups. That means they have 2 different alleles for the blood groups. Okay, so man has blood group A. So in your answer, you must have the titles at the left-hand side here, which are parents, phenotype, genotype, meiosis, gametes, fertilization, genotype of child, and phenotypic ratio, right? And then on the other side here, right side, you write down first the parents are a man and a woman, right? And the man has blood group B, so the phenotype of the man is, the man has blood group A, so phenotype of man is blood group A, and phenotype of woman is blood group B, right? Next, what is the genotype? This is where you have to determine the genotype, all right? Now we know that those in blood group A will have either of, there are 2 genotypes that are possible for those in blood group A. You are either homozygous, dominant, or heterozygous, okay? But here it says that both parents are heterozygous for their blood groups. So what is a heterozygous man, a heterozygous blood group A man? What is the genotype? He will have 2 different alleles for in his cells. So it should be IA, IO. Since he's blood group A, he must have IA for that causes production of antigen A, right? And the other one is IO. Because IO is recessive, it will not express its trait. Okay, so IA will express its trait. IA is the dominant allele. Now, for a woman with blood group B who is heterozygous, the genotype is IBIO. These are the two different alleles present in a person with blood group B. The IB will cause formation of antigen B. Right, so now can you please fill up what happens in meiosis? What are the alleles in the gametes? And then what are the alleles in the child? Okay, and then what is the phenotype or blood group of the child? And the phenotypic ratio. Okay, so pause the video for a while and just try to fill in the blanks here. All right. Okay, let's look at the answer. Now, a man with blood group A, right? During meiosis, in the formation of the sperms, these two alleles will separate from each other. All right. When the homologous chromosomes number 9 separate from each other, these two alleles will separate from each other. So each gamete will have one of these alleles, right? So the first gamete has allele IA, right? Second gamete has allele IO. Now, for a woman with blood group B, she produces two types of gametes. The first type of gamete has allele IB, and the other one has allele IO. Just separate the two alleles from each other, okay, in the formation of gametes. Now, in fertilization, sperm from the man will fuse with the ovum from the woman, right? And there are different possibilities. So the first possibility is that the first gamete from the man fuses with the first gamete from the woman to produce a specific genotype for the child. What is that? In this case, the first one, follow the arrow here, and just combine these two alleles together. The first child will have the genotype IAIB. Then this gamete can also fuse, the first gamete can also fuse with the second gamete from the other, the second gamete from the woman. So the result is a child with genotype IAIO. Okay, follow the green lines. Now the third one, the blue lines. If the third possibility occurs, then the child will have genotype IBIO. Always write the dominant allele first. All right. So don't write IOIB. O is the recessive allele, so we write it later. So IBIO, and the last one is IOIO, right? Which is a recessive trait, which will show the recessive trait of blood group O. Now, find out the phenotype of the child. A child who has these two alleles, IIB, will have the phenotype or observable characteristic of blood group what? AB. A child with genotype IAIO will have the phenotype A, and a child with genotype IBIO will have the phenotype B. Child with genotype IOIO will have the phenotype O. Okay, so the phenotypic ratio here will be 1AB is to 1A is to 1B is to 1O. Okay, now go back to our question. So determine the probability of the couple getting a child with blood group AB. Now AB is this one, right? So it's 1 out of 4. So the probability of getting a child with blood group AB is 1/4 times 100 will be 25%, or if you don't put it in percentage, it's just 1/4. All right. So in the marking of this diagram, 1 mark will be given for each horizontal line, each answer. So it's marked horizontally. For example, you will get a tick for phenotype, 1 mark here, a tick for genotype, another tick for gametes. Okay, 3 ticks already. The 4th tick is for genotype of child, 5th tick for the phenotype, 6 will be for phenotypic ratio, 7th tick is for your working, and the 8th tick is for your answer. All right. And also maybe marks will be given when you write meiosis here for the arrows here, and fertilization. All right. Maybe 1 mark for both labels. So any 8 points to get 8 marks. Now let's try a question. You'll try this question on your own, and I will give the answer in a short while. Okay. A man with blood group B has a parent whose blood group is O. The man married a woman with blood group AB. With the help of a genetic diagram, show the possible genotypes of their children and calculate the probability of having an offspring with blood group B. 8 marks. So you have to draw a genetic diagram, right? Now, so pause the video for a while and referring back to our previous slide, you can write down the titles at the side here, like parents, genotype, phenotype, etc. And then draw your schematic diagram. Okay? So try and draw a schematic diagram on your own first, and then after that, we are going to discuss the answer. So pause the video and draw your diagram. Right, now let's look at the answer. So parents are the man and the woman, all right? And it could be father and mother also. Now, the phenotype of the man. Look at the question. Man with blood group B. So he has blood group B. That means he must have what, the allele IB already. But what is the other allele? Is it IB? Does he have the genotype IB or IBIO? Now, since his parent has blood group O, if a parent has blood group O, it means that the genotype of the parent is IO. So this parent will only give the allele IO to the man, to the son, right? So that means this man will inherit one IO allele from his parent. So he has the genotype IBIO and not IBIB. That means he's a heterozygous individual, heterozygous for blood group B. Okay, that's how you conclude from this hint here. Now, the man married a woman with blood group AB. So blood group AB has only one genotype, is IAIB. So remember, a person with blood group A can have two possible genotypes. Blood group B also has two possible genotypes. Blood group AB, only one possible genotype. Only one genotype, IAIB. Blood group O also only one genotype, IOIO. Right. So now meiosis occurs. So write the title meiosis here and draw the two arrows. And then circle put the gametes in. You must have the circles around the gametes, all right? Here to show that they are gametes. So separate these two alleles from each other. During anaphase 1 of meiosis, these two alleles will separate, just as the homologous chromosomes separate. So first gamete has allele IB, second gamete has allele IO. And this one, first gamete has allele IA, second gamete has allele IB, right? Then in fertilization, the gametes will fuse together. The male gametes will fuse with the female gamete, right? Male gamete will fuse with the female gamete. So the first genotype possible is IB and IA. Always write the A before the B. So IAIB. Second, this is the first genotype that's possible. And the second genotype of the child that's possible is IBIB, right? Now, the third possible genotype of the child is IAIO. Now, the last genotype of the child here is IBIO, right? IBIO, okay, the purple lines here. So now let's look at the phenotype of the child. Now, the phenotype of this child who has the genotype IAIB is AB. For this child with genotype IBIB, the phenotype is B. Third child, IAIO. So the phenotype is A. And the fourth child has genotype IBIO. So the phenotype of the blood group is B. Okay? So the phenotype here means the blood group, the observable characteristic or the characteristic that can be tested. Now, next, we are supposed to find the phenotypic ratio. So group all the same blood groups together. All right, for example, for the B blood group, there are 2 with B blood group, so 2B, right? There's one AB and 2B and only one A here. So the phenotypic ratio of the children is 1AB is to 2B is to 1A. Okay? Now, let's look at the question here. The question here is not asking for the phenotypic ratio of the children. It's asking you to calculate the probability of having an offspring with blood group B, right? So the probability of having offspring with blood group B equals to, as we can see from the phenotypic ratio, 2 out of 4, right? So total number of children here are 4, and out of that, 2 have blood group B. So 2 over 4 times 100, and that is equal to 50%, or in terms of fraction is half. All right. So if you're not sure whether to write in percentage or fraction, you just write it in both, unless it is stated in the question. All right. That is for probability. Okay. You can write in percentage and also in fraction. Now, as to the marking of this answer, is similar to the previous slide. So 1 mark for each horizontal line, that's correct here, right? And 1 mark for writing meiosis and fertilization as the 2 processes. And also 1 mark for the calculations and the answers, right? So if you give an answer without any calculation, you didn't write down 2 over 4 times 100, you may not get that 1 mark, right? Always show the working. Finally, let's look at an objective question. 4 siblings in a family have different blood groups, which are A, AB, B, and O. What are the possible blood groups of their 2 parents, right? So pause the video for a moment and try to answer this question and show some working. All right, and show how you can get your answer from the information given. Okay, what is your answer here? Okay, let's look at the reasoning, right? The answer is C. So did you get the right answer? Now let's see how to explain this. First of all, a child, you must be aware that a child inherits 1 allele from each parent. That's how a child has 2 alleles for blood group. Father will give him 1 allele, mother will give him 1 allele. Okay? So one child has blood group AB, right? In the family, the siblings, it could be a male or female. So the child has blood group AB. Okay, so I just use the male gender here, just to make it easy. His genotype is IAIB, because if he belongs to blood group AB, he must have the genotype IAIB, right? There's only one genotype for blood group AB. So the inference is that one parent has allele IA and the other parent has allele IB. So another child has blood group O. Again, is the genotype. There's only one genotype for blood group O, which is IOIO. The inference here is that one parent has donated the allele 1, has given the allele IO, and the other parent has given the allele IO also to his child, right? So each parent must have one allele IO already. We know that, right? So we combine these two together, these two inferences. So the first parent will have the genotype IAIO. That means he belongs to blood group A. And the second parent will have alleles IBIO, right? So he belongs to blood group B. So the answer is C. The first parent, it can be the mother or father, has the alleles, has the phenotype of blood group, has the phenotype A, and the second parent has the phenotype of blood group B. Answer is C. Okay, so sometimes in the problems we can infer from the information given what the genotypes of the parents are, if we know the genotypes of the siblings.